So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, and it's great to be here on a Wednesday. We have a great guest, very excited to be able to talk about LifeX Lab. I'll bring on Jerry Vardzel in a moment. But before we get started, just want to get some housekeeping out of the way. And number one, Huntington Bank, want to thank them for always being our partner and supportive of all experiments. And we're headed into our one-year experiment. So I think it's probably institutionalized at this point. And our organization at the Tech Council called 40 by 80. That's the longitude and latitude of Pittsburgh. And that is where we focus on workforce development and entrepreneurship. So today, like every day, we ask that we've muted your microphone so that we don't hear things in the background. And we also have a chat. And I am here today without Jonathan Kirsting, who's usually with us here every day. And I'll keep my eyes on the chat and keep the conversation moving. But I am very thrilled to have really early on in the journey of the new CEO, president and CEO of LifeX, Gerald, also known as Jerry Vardzel. And we're going to bring him up to the forefront now. And I'm just going to say, hey, welcome, and hope you're safe and sound given all that's gone on in COVID. But I also want to talk about you, Jerry. Who is Jerry? Tell us about your journey. Tell us about your journey to the point of where you are right now running LifeX.
So Audrey, thank you very much for having me on today. It's a pleasure to speak to everyone. In my journey, who is Jerry Vardzel is pretty well anyone that knows me. I pretty well say it the way it is. I've been a very fortunate through the years to have some of the most outstanding mentors, coaches, and folks to help me along my path. I've been involved early in my career with Becton Dickinson, where I basically got to learn so many facets of the company. From there, I've had an opportunity to be with some startups. I've done some mergers and acquisitions, been on the equity side as advisors. There's been some great successes, and there's been a few room for improvement, to say the least, through the journey. But it has been a journey, and a great journey. And I think at the end of the day, I'm fortunate, very fortunate, like I said, to have the mentorship, the leadership behind me to continue to teach me along the way, both on successes and a lot of learning, to say the least, learning experiences. But most recently, I had an opportunity to come back to Pittsburgh, Audrey, as you and I were speaking before, to acquire Lifx, a company in Lawrenceville, a diagnostic company, originally Precision. And it was one journey that I think from all my experiences was able to put them all together and build a team, which I've been very fortunate to have outstanding teams through the years. We acquired that company in December of 2016, came back to Pittsburgh looking for a company to acquire, to be blunt. And I guess January 2017, I woke up and I said, well, this is going to be interesting. And I always tell everyone, I think I owed, or the company owed everybody in Pittsburgh something. And, we took over all the liabilities, and it was a 3-year journey, outstanding journey. And I have to give credit to the backyard of Pittsburgh, not necessarily in our funding mechanisms, but just the support with some of the folks to help us along the way. And of course, we were acquired, went public in 2019, April. And it's been a great ride, and it's a good success story in my opinion.
So here, and is Lifx still in Pittsburgh?
It is. The labs are over in Lawrenceville. The team, a good solid team there. Some of the folks that I've been a part of, I mean, it's just an outstanding team. The headquarters is Predictive. They're out of Minneapolis, but Lifx, the division of Lifx, is still right here in Pittsburgh.
Good story. So Tell everyone about, like, you're a Pittsburgh native, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh. I was fortunate to go to the stay in state, go to the University of Pittsburgh, and upon graduating, moved right out. Not necessarily that was my dream to leave Pittsburgh at that time. Just had an opportunity to get into the medical space, and a company said, you'll do whatever it takes, right? And I remember the gentleman's name, Walter Burns, and I said, yeah, to get a shot at it, just give me a shot. I think it was a time when everybody wanted to get into medical sales, pharmaceutical sales, and it came back where, do you have experience? And of course, where do I got experience? I'm just graduating. So he said, all right, I'm going to hold you to it. We're going to move you to Los Angeles. And I said, well, where? And they put me on a plane and sent me to Los Angeles and gave me a company car and said, here's what you're going to do. And, it's a little different driving on the freeways out there and the lifestyle out there than growing up in Pittsburgh, where we had two dressings. We had French and ranch dressing to have all these other experiences. So it was an eye opener, Audrey.
That's great. That's great. So talk about LifeX. So tell everyone, what is LifeX? What's the mission? What are the objectives? And what do you have in store?
So I think there's, no surprise. I mean, with LifeX and the incubators and the accelerators in our backyard, I think if we could take a step back, if you don't mind, instead of just writing the mission, if I could just tell you a little bit of where the landscape from that perspective of where the mission's going. And I think, everybody says accelerator, incubator, where LifeX is going is a combination of all the above. I've been using lately a word, an innovative capital growth company, which encompasses all those things, right? We've had many different entities, and this is actually why my involvement in this after Lifx. I was very fortunate to know the team, know Evan and the group there, and get to be involved before moving forward. But from an outsider, I've seen all the different, incubators, accelerators, whether, it's a PLSG, it's an Alpha, all the ones that are out there. I've been very fortunate to look at from the outside. And I think there's a lot of good things in some of them, and things, like we said before, where I look and say rooms for improvement. So where do we see LifeX going is, I think you're going to see the mission or the focus is ultimately to bring value to our backyard, our ecosystem in the life sciences sector. I mean, that's easier said than done, right? We've had a lot of opportunities to get that done, but it's a little broader than that. It's really taking that life science, not just from an economic perspective or the ecosystem. It's how are we going to be measured? And that is the successes of those portfolio companies. And before we can really look at success of a company, we have to really realize, what are we good at? Obviously we're good at robotics, right? I mean, we've built that out in some ways, and it's a good sector. But have we really built out the life sciences sector? And it depends on who you talk to, right? Someone's like, oh, we have the infrastructure, we just need funding. Well, funding's an excuse, right? No kidding. I mean, if you and I started a company tomorrow, Audrey, we need funding. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. But so going back to what you said, what is LifeX? I look at it as an innovative capital growth company, not, and capital being part of it. But I look at it as very simply that our mission will be to de-risk time, resources, and investment. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, in taking companies, we've built out, or, if I had a slide or a whiteboard behind me, I would show you, we've built out what is de-risk time, resources, and investment. Well, it's really 4 parallel lines. One, the commercial viability or success of a product, widget, or whatever you're bringing, right, in your company. The next one is your capital strategy. Third, facilities infrastructure. And fourth, resources, FTEs. And each of those have specific milestone segments towards whatever you define the success. The success of a startup company could be being acquired, licensing. It could be a more social impact, providing some instrumentation or something to a third world country. That's still success in terms of a portfolio, or it could be a $1 billion IPO. So we need to, at LifeX and in our backyard, we need to look at, from an investment strategy, a commercial strategy, we have to say, de-risk the time, resources, and investment going forward to bring these companies to some exit point or some successful entry point to where they wanted to go in commercialization. And they have to be focused. You can't just, it's not one size fits all. And so as you see over the next month, 2-3 months, you're going to see those 4 criteria or those 4 lines. We're going to exhaust them, build them out, and more importantly, create LifeX, very similar as we would want a portfolio company or a company in our backyard spun out of wherever it's spun out of, to be able to look at how can we de-risk the time, resources, and investment to get it to that point. And the only way we're going to do that, in all honesty, is we're going to have to work inside our infrastructure, i.e. The Western Pennsylvania, but we're going to also have to go outside of Western Pennsylvania and recruit in terms of not recruit just expertise, recruit the ability to leverage it to be known outside of Western Pennsylvania once we're established inside Western Pennsylvania.
So
hopefully that's helpful.
are there portfolio companies, like talk about services, and is there space where people can, companies can reside? Can you talk a little bit about that? And also talk about what's the definition of life sciences?
Well, I don't really know the definitions of life sciences. And I'll say sort of how I answered when I acquired Lifx, and somebody asked me, how do you, what's your reimbursement? And I said, I don't know how to spell reimbursement, because I wouldn't build a company, on reimbursement, because, at the end of the day, we see where that goes. I mean, I had a different mindset where we were going there. So I'll get back to your life sciences, but what we have in terms of capabilities is, we have the office space over on the south side. We have wet lab space over on over in Lawrenceville in the chocolate factory. So we do have the facilities or infrastructure. But where I think you need to look at, Audrey, is it's not the field of dreams. I hate to use that analogy. It's not a fit for everyone, and this is where I struggle with growing a company. You don't need all those components. Each company is different. So where I'm going back to where I said de-risk. So if you want to de-risk something, if you and I are starting a company and we need some lab space, we may just need a bench in our garage because we're worried about even getting a paycheck, let alone, this all state-of-the-art lab space, right? So that's where it goes back to this 4 segments that I talk about. Number 1, the commercial viability. 2, the funding strategy or capital. And 3, the infrastructure and facilities. We have facilities at LifeX, but we have to branch out and look at other areas in Pittsburgh. There might be a better suited facility for one of our portfolio companies that just has a lower, has different expertise, different capabilities. We have to look at these companies as not a one size fit all, but to be able to create the viability to be able to get them there. So to answer your question, we do have the facilities, but that doesn't mean we stop there. There may be somebody, down the road that has some other space that's more suitable for one of our portfolio companies to help them de-risk, right, to be able to move forward. So that's where we are in terms of the facilities. I don't look at LifeX. This is my opinion. I hope I share this with the folks as we go forward. We're not a real estate group, right? I mean, ultimately, LifeX is about moving companies forward, right? And if we're going to be an innovative capital growth company, and bringing these companies forward, we have to de-risk. We have to be the same as our startup companies or even an established company. We need to de-risk time, resources, and investment. So I think we have a great foundation, Audrey, but I think we need to continue to push ourselves and look and say, are these facilities today what we need tomorrow, or are we going to need more or less, or what? And I think that's where the flexibility comes in as we go forward. To answer your question on life sciences, because I didn't want to sway away from that. You know, life sciences is such a broad. I mean, life sciences today could mean so many different things, you know, and I look at the definition of life sciences is, you know, more so of those companies that are going to have a meaningful impact in terms of whether it's healthcare, lifestyle, from that perspective. And it could be a widget, it could be a drug, it could be all the above, it could be an AI component, you know, predictive models. So I think what we need to do is look at the end of the day, the companies that fit into the portfolio to get us defined, however you want to define life sciences, to be able to say, okay, here's our niches within life sciences that we can move forward. Because the only way we're going to be measured in our backyard, bluntly, is I can sit here and tell you all these great ideas, but at the end of the day, our success is just going to be measured on how we move those companies forward in our backyard. Whether, like I said, they don't need to be a $1 billion IPO, but they need to move forward along their progression. And if we can do that and move forward, I think we're making a major, meaningful impact in Western Pennsylvania, i.e. Pittsburgh.
And so, yeah, I wasn't trying to stump you. I just wanted people to understand, what does life sciences mean? Is it diagnostics? Is it health IT, medical devices, et cetera, et cetera? So you answered that. And so
thank you.
If companies, when you say in your portfolio, you have companies, quote unquote, in the LifeX portfolio now, do they get money? Do they get all the 4 things that you just spoke about? Some of them get space. Is it just an array of things? And how could anyone who's in that life sciences space get engaged with LifeX?
Well, to answer your question, yes, we have some companies in the portfolio. I think we do provide some of the basic ingredients, you know, in terms of office space, facilities. We have some great EIR. We have some definitely the expertise, and we have some very strong strategic partners, right? I mean, we do have you know, the Innovation Institute. You have the CMU. We have the infrastructure. Is when I came to Pittsburgh, in our backyard, right? I mean, Pittsburgh, think about it. I said this the first day when I was asked why did I want to come back and do this in Pittsburgh? Well, you know, we have the universities. We have a University of Pittsburgh. We have a Carnegie Mellon. And we're not discounting Duquesne, Point Park, and all those, but we have those universities. Pitt, in terms of the NIH, Carnegie Mellon, in terms of their AI and all those areas. Oh, and by the way, we also have healthcare systems. We have UPMC. We have Allegheny. I mean, we have that kind of infrastructure here. So we need to leverage that. To answer your question, are we providing all 4 of those segments to our portfolio companies today? I would boldly put needs improvement, and then under it, needs improvement. And then one more time, needs improvement. And where I'm going with that is, how can people help? Well, there's no reason we need to rebuild things. Just like I said, these other accelerators, incubators of the past, there's some good things we can learn from them, right? And we need to take those things and the things that we're working, we need to continue to build off of. But in terms of the 4, you know, I call them the you know, we're building it out. The commercial viability, the funding, and then ultimately the facilities infrastructure, and then the resources. we're going to be building out an advisory group. I'm sharing a little bit of what we're doing. We're moving, we have EIRs, but what we need to do is we need to build out an advisory board. And it's not just the expertise in Pittsburgh of building out these domain expertise. We need to go beyond. And where we're going with this, just to give you a snapshot, is we want to be able, and I was talking to one of our portfolio, or actually one of them in our pipeline this morning, just before I got on this call. And I was talking to him about one segment of his business that we need to work on. So if you could go back to what I was saying earlier and look at those 4 criteria, notice that each one has a trigger point that impacts each other, right? So if you need regulatory to get pre-IND, right? You need regulatory expertise. It's going to impact your funding strategy, your capital, right? Because somebody's going to say, once you get that, we'll be able to write you a check. The problem is, how do I get there, right? And create or de-risk that. Then you need the facilities, and then you need the resources. So this advisory group would be, instead of bringing one individual or 1 or 2 individuals to look at that portfolio company, let's bring in a segment of experts. So I could bring Audrey, who's done regulatory work out of California. I could bring Ann, who's right here in our backyard, that works for XYZ, that's sitting on our advisory. And I can bring Charlie and Bob, and I bring 4 of them together, and they work with that company for their regulatory path. So you're getting expertise from 4 folks to be able to hit that trigger point. So I guess the first thing to answer your question is what we're looking for. I'm looking for domain expertise in every functional operational component that's needed in a company. Now, do I need Audrey every single time and every single project? No, but I'm going to call you Audrey and say, you're a regulatory guru. Would you mind sitting on this panel with these 5 other individuals to help this company on their regulatory strategy? So number 1, that's big.
So people want to help and participate. Should they reach out to you via, what's your website?
www.lifexlabs.com -lifx-labs.com. But even before going to the website, email me. I mean, this is something I want to do. This has to happen, Audrey.
Yeah, I think, so you're saying that the nimbleness is all depending upon what the companies need, and that you're going to try to pull in the expertise about where they are in their leg of the journey of building their business, and infuse them with the skills and the talent that they need for that milestone that they're at.
Because each company's different. Exactly.
Right. Each company's different.
And the funding strategy, we need to build out our funding strategy. We haven't even talked about that, right?
Yeah, I was going to get into that. So if I'm part of your portfolio company, talk to me about that. What's the help? I have a company, I'm solving something that's tied to the pandemic, contactless something. And what's the help?
So right now, we're not fortunate enough to say that we have a little lump sum of money there to be able to put some seed money into some of these companies.
Right.
I mean, that's obvious. So that's something we need to look at, Audrey. Okay. And I won't get into specifics today, but it's really a 2-tier approach. So we definitely need to be able to look at some capital to be part of that earlier pre-seed seed money with some of these companies. We also need to be able to have the ability to look at the additional funding based on that milestones going forward. So that is work in progress. And like I said earlier, funding, we all need funding. So how do we help today as we're building that out? Well, one thing that we need to do is we need to be realistic, right? I mean, we have to look at those portfolio companies and not just look at how many we bring into the portfolio, these companies. We have to do our due diligence, right? And be able to say, I'd rather know up front that if I'm a go, no go, right? Like a drug company, they'd rather know out of the chute, right? We need to do the same thing. And sometimes we just, we bring these companies in and they're highly touted, but when you do the due diligence, they're not going to be able to move forward. So we need to do a better job collectively of doing our due diligence and de-risking these companies. Then we need to look at, we can't just blame the backyard that we don't have funding, right? Because everybody, has issues with funding. We'll hear about Silicon Valley, we'll hear about Raleigh, which I spent a lot of time in, and we'll hear about Cambridge and all these areas. But at the end of the day, if we show some successes and help our companies build the model, we can look at non-traditional means of investment, right? I mean, a lot of things that we're doing now is not just looking at angel investors. We can do the introductions to some of the VCs and some of the equity groups, and you know what they're going to say, right? Talk to me when you hit X, or talk to me when you're at Y. I mean, so why keep doing that? Well, you want to do that because if you create this scorecard with them, then you're on their radar, but they're not going to fund you today. But let's look at some non-traditional strategic investments. Let's look at some of these portfolio companies and say, is this an opportunity that you could go to XYZ company and get some funding in a pilot? Or is this an opportunity to be introduced to an equity group that has another company in their portfolio that your product line, your widget could be an add-on? So we got to start thinking that this capital, that line, this funding capital growth matches up to the commercialization plan. And so at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're taking a look at the quality of our portfolio companies coming in, and then looking at how we can move them to each of the milestones. And it doesn't have to be, and it works. I understand that, you go A to B, C to D, and that has been a proven path. But there's also other paths that we can look in a non-traditional way by using the resources we have in the backyard to do that.
So we only have a few minutes, and there's a lot of questions that I still have. And one of them is that we were in this pandemic. There are people who have tried, to build solutions, but there are also a whole playing field of capability here. What do you see around the bend in terms of our opportunities in this quote unquote sector?
Yeah.
Are you seeing things that are just, stellar? Are we, is the opportunity here just a rich gold mine? Tell me what you're bullish on.
The pandemic, we go on and on. I mean, there's a lot of negative connotation, right? I mean, people lost lives and all that. But from a business perspective, I have a totally different perspective. I understand the restaurants, and by no means am I downplaying that area. But in terms of life sciences, in terms of healthcare, I think this has been a reset, Audrey. I think if you ask me today the best time to start a company, I would say this is the best day right now. I think the opportunity is there. I think we have a reset. I think we're going to look at some niche unmet needs, both in healthcare, that with it, some of the most successful companies are the ones you sit here at the dinner table or sitting with colleagues and say, wait, I've been thinking of that for the past 15 years. That's not rocket science. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, they're at some valuation that you're saying, I wish I would have bought that stock a long time ago. But so I think we are in a great opportunity, i.e. in Pittsburgh. That's why I'm here at Life. I think there is going to be some really, really jewels in the rough, to say the least, to be able to look. I think the AI space, look out. I think as we look at predictive modeling and doing things in healthcare, virtual pharmaceutical companies, I mean, diagnostics and a new way of looking at it from formularies. I could go on and on, Audrey. This is one of those trigger points that this has been a reset, and now we can go forward. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, we're bullish, so we want these things to succeed. There's been a long history of trying to help the life sciences community, and it does take heavy lifting. It does take larger amounts of capital, often, not always. And
Mhm.
so we, ask everyone to go to the LifeX site that we put out there. Reach out to Jerry if you have some ideas. It sounds like he's putting together teams of people who can help at different inflection points for many of these companies. And many of you who are on this call understand that and have capabilities. So I think what we should do is check in with you again, Jerry, to see how it's going, like as you've taken this on and what kind of partnerships you've formulated. I personally, on behalf of the tech community, would like to see more shingles put out here that are from around the world who are working on complex issues and helping to lift up these companies who come out of the University of Pitt, who have deep research, who have been working in Carnegie Mellon, and that their shingles are here in Pittsburgh because they know this is where the next great set of things are going to come out of. So my hat's off to you taking this new role, and we'll keep in touch with you. I really appreciate you taking 30 minutes out of your day to talk about some of these things. We certainly didn't cover everything, but go out to LifeX, reach out to Jerry if there's anything that you're interested in. He said he was open, he said he needed help, and he wanted help. So I want to thank everyone for being with us today and tomorrow. Who's here? Who's going to remind me who's here tomorrow? We're going to hear from a new venture fund that was created by Jake Katarinzik, Mike Stubler, and Will Allen. We're going to talk with them tomorrow. So we're still, Jerry, talking about capital, right? And that Taylor put out the events. We're talking about capital. We talk about it each and every day. Almost everything that we touch relates to that. What we care about is building Pittsburgh's innovation and technology ecosystem so that we have these big companies that are here, the talent is here, and the passion is here, as you've heard today. So I want to thank everyone, and thank you, Jerry, for taking the time with us. We'll see you here tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you.